which teams could best be able to overcome losing their starting quarterback. And you, I know, have put together your top 5.
Yeah, and it's really centered around who's got the best and the healthiest backup quarterback situation, Greeny. So 5-1, starting with number 5. I want to look at the Cleveland Browns and Case Keenum. If you look at Case Keenum, the last time he was a full-time starter in an offense that really fit his skill set was with Minneapolis in 2017, or Minnesota, excuse me. And he goes, 68% completion percentage, 22 touchdowns, and takes them to the NFC Championship game. Case Keenum having to play for the Browns, they'll be able to weather a storm. Number 4, Indy with Jacoby Brissett. Jacoby Brissett last year, before injury, had the Colts sitting at 5-2. He had 14 touchdowns to 3 interceptions. He was playing really solid football. And with the addition of Michael Pittman and Jonathan Taylor, this offense has some pieces, but Jacoby Brissett has to play. He can go and play well. Number 3, the New Orleans Saints. Look at what they did with Teddy Bridgewater last year and now having Jameis Winston. We all know that Jameis has got to figure out some issues with turnovers. Well, Sean Payton is one of the best offensive minds in football and certainly understands how to protect quarterbacks and some of their weaknesses. They have the best receiver in football, or arguably the best receiver in football, and plenty of offensive weapons. Jameis, with his experience, could go and play well for the New Orleans Saints. Number 2 would be the Chicago Bears. Ex-Super Bowl MVP Nick Foles. And he's a perfect scheme fit for what Matt Nagy wants to do. If he has to step on the field, they're going to run a ton of shotgun. They're going to run a ton of the RPO, the run-pass option game, giving him those 2 of those options, and they're going to make that offensive line better, getting the ball out of his hands. He can go play good football as the backup for the Bears. And the best situation is the Dallas Cowboys with Andy Dalton. Listen, Andy Dalton, the last time he was healthy and played a full season, he threw for 25 touchdowns. If he needs to go play for the Dallas Cowboys, who are going to have a top 6 talent-wise offense, one of the best offensive lines in football, a very good run game. Andy Dalton has never had this talent around him. If he has to go in and play, if Dak comes down and gets coronavirus and has to go play a couple games, the Cowboys honestly will not skip a beat offensively for a couple games. Andy Dalton gives them the best situation to handle this. And Greeny, the reality is this. The likelihood that you are going to have to play games without your starting quarterback this year is higher than it's ever been, even with, or because we often see it with injury, now with the coronavirus. Look at last season. The Steelers and the Lions both had solid to good seasons derailed because their quarterbacks went down.
Yep.
And then look at the Titans and their Saints. Both their backup quarterbacks saved their seasons. So the Cowboys are in the best situation.
I love the list. RC, what do you think of it?
I don't love the list, Greeny. Here's why I don't love the list. Dan Orlovsky's tricky. He loves his quarterbacks. So he put the Bears at 2 for the best backup situation. What he forgot to mention is it's because the Bears got 2 backup. That's why they ain't got no starter, Dan. Of course they're going to win the backup Olympics because they got 2 backups, Dan. You don't know if it's going to be Foles or
That's
Trubisky.
wrong.
So you should have put them at 1 because you should have said they're number 1. Because whenever anybody gets sick on that team or is injured at quarterback, they got an equal backup to the starter because they ain't got no starter. You know what?
Listen, I'm not here to jump on Mitch Trubisky.
I love it.
I'm not here to jump on Mitch Trubisky. What I'm here to tell you is this. Mitchell Trubisky, I expect to be the starter week 1. And then if something happens due to the coronavirus, Nick Foles will step in and play well. You may think of him as a backup, but on the depth chart, he's going to be listed as the starter. And in that week, he's going to prep for him to be the starter. And so they're in a good... Don't bring your quarterback hate over here, RC.
Hey, Daniel, here you go. Mitchell Trubisky is the starter unless he gets sick. Mitchell Trubisky might be the starter until he starts playing like Mitchell Trubisky again. That's why they went out to get Nick Foles. And so I'm not going to sit here and let you stand here and be, you know what? We might change this like week 6 and be like, you know what? The Bears are in a great position at backup quarterback because if Mitchell Trubisky has to play, he's been the starter there in the last 3 years. I'm not allowing it to happen, Dan.
I like it.
Not going to happen.
Let me jump in here. Let me get Darlington in because there's 2 names that I think belong in this discussion because there are 2 quarterbacks who are available who under the right circumstances, are better than many teams' starters. Forget about backups, and they are Colin Kaepernick and Cam Newton. Where do they belong in this conversation, Jeff? Which is to say, where are we with regard to either of them winding up on a team?
First of all, I hate to get involved in the Mitch Trubisky debate between Ryan and Orlovsky right now, but let's go ahead and go down a little bit of a different road. And here's what's especially interesting about that, Greeny. First of all, both guys still available and seemingly will be into training camp. We always talk about eventually a guy getting hurt and having a player step up. Well, what could put the greatest twist on all of this craziness that we've already seen would be, here's the thing, we're talking about backup quarterbacks potentially stepping in for a starter getting coronavirus. I can't wrap my head around the idea of not having to quarantine the backup quarterback who spends more time with the starter than anybody else. If the starter gets coronavirus, how are we not then concerned about the backup also getting it? Bruce Arians has gone down this road saying potentially we'll have to have an emergency third quarterback who stays away from the facility, and we bring him in the case of that. So what happens then, Greeny, if Colin Kaepernick is out there and your whole quarterback room ends up with coronavirus? I know this sounds like this crazy, wild thought, but is it really that wild? Is it not a very clear possibility when we talk about the contagious nature of this disease?
Go ahead, RC.
I'm sorry. You know what's crazy about that statement? You basically just said we're at a point in life, even with Colin Kaepernick, the last time we seen him being able to play, we watched him be in shape for his workout, that you're basically waiting on the zombie apocalypse to happen in one quarterback room in order to make Colin Kaepernick a viable choice at that position. And that's sad. He should have an opportunity before that. He's better than many of the backups on a lot of these teams.